"Oh, he is always as colorless as you now see him," said Franz. "Then you know him?" almost screamed the Countess. "Oh, pray do, for heaven's sake, tell us all about it. Is he a vampire, or a resuscitated corpse, or what? I fancy I've seen him before, and I even think he recognizes me." "And I can well understand," said the Countess, shrugging up her beautiful shoulders, as though an involuntary shudder passed through her veins, "that those who have once seen that man will never be likely to forget him." The sensation experienced by Franz was evidently not peculiar to himself. Another, and wholly uninterested person, felt the same unaccountable awe and misgiving. "Well," inquired Franz, after the Countess had a second time directed her lorgnette at the box, "what do you think of our opposite neighbor?" "Why, that he is no other than Lord Ruthven himself, in a living form." This fresh allusion to Byron drew a smile to Franz's countenance, although he could but allow that if anything was likely to induce belief in the existence of vampires, it would be the presence of such a man as a mysterious personage before him. "I must positively find out who and what he is," said Franz, rising from his seat. "No, no," cried the Countess. "You must not leave me. I depend upon you to escort me home. Oh, indeed, I cannot permit you to go." "Is it possible," whispered Franz, "that you entertain any fear?" Hell yeah, vampires. This is fun. I didn't expect to get so directly horror involved in Monte Cristo. Lord Ruthven. Shall we go into that reference? Lord Ruthven is an invention from a short story written by John Polidori called The Vampire. John Polidori apparently was one of the people in that infamous weekend when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. Lord Byron was there. Mary Shelley's husband, Percy Polidori, is there. There's a great Ken Russell film called Gothic, if you want a cinematic look at that night. I am surprised more books haven't been written about that night, fictionalized or nonfiction. It seems like a ripe territory for a dramatic story. I'm going to paraphrase what I believe I understand of it. That trip, while it was a summer trip, fell in May to June of 1816, and happened to fall in this year that was called the Year Without a Summer. And the reason for that was that there was a massive rain caused by volcanic ash, and it just made so many days in which the summer was dark and cold and wet, creating a kind of gloomy atmosphere that really pushed forward those Gothic vibes. And you had Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, well, she was Mary Godwin at the time, Percy Shelley, Claire Claremont, Lord Byron, and Dr. John Polidori, who was Byron's physician. This is the sort of thing of myth and legend, but as you hear it told so many times, they had a competition to who could write the scariest story. Mary Shelley, of course, wrote what would become Frankenstein. Polidori wrote what would become The Vampire, which was a precursor to Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's some contested claims that perhaps Byron wrote The Vampire with Polidori and just gave Polidori the credit for it. I always find interesting the way people tell this story. Sometimes it's, told over a weekend, or they wrote this, they sat by the fireplace and then retired to the rooms for the night, where Mary Shelley had a nightmare, and when she awoke, she had the full story of Frankenstein in her mind and wrote it. And it's like the presentation of these stories comes from like a very short period of time, like 48 hours, if that. But really, they were there from May to June. I would imagine that it was a much more drawn-out process than that. Maybe they had the idea for the challenge one night and then presented it a few weeks later. Now, I haven't read it, but apparently this trip was documented in Mary and Percy Shelley's publication called A History of a 6 Weeks Tour, which I should probably read that because I have a lot of interest in this weekend. Anyway, let's talk about The Vampire for a second, Polidori's short story, because it is incredibly influential in that it transforms the ghoulish, creaturey vampire in whatever, form it took before this time into a more seductive, aristocratic archetype that obviously Dracula would supercharge and popularize for the rest of time. But before that, vampires were very creature-esque, primarily. When you see Dracula or renditions of vampire tales, they can transform into beasts. They get beastly when they're feeding or whatever the interpretation might be. But before this, they were primarily beasts, men turned into bloodsuckers. But this introduces the idea of a monster among the elite, which is important for the reference in today's passage because they are recognizing Dante as one of their own, a member of the social elite, but also that he is very corpse-like, very dark, mysterious, and has the visage of a vampire. Clearly that brings mystery, but also danger along with his reputation. So we're now getting a good glimpse at how Dante is perceived among the society in which he moves. Whether or not we understand his influence or function is yet to come. So I find this fascinating. I did not expect to be able to talk about Mary Shelley while talking about Monte Cristo, but here we are. Okay, I'm happy. Are you happy? Join me here tomorrow. Let's see if we get more vampire talk. Until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.